Alright, I'm back with another Destiny 2 video, and there's actually quite a lot to talk about. Obviously it's a new season, but I just wanted to make a quick video on something that came up yesterday as a bit of a controversy. No, not the is Oryx in the front or back of the room debate, which I cannot relitigate again. The majority voted, and he is in the front of the room, even though that is wrong. He is in the back of the room. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about today was a bit of controversy with the seasonal reset quest yesterday, where you're doing a pirate lord hunt, and they've kind of done these little mini carve-out lost sectors that are floating in space, and you go through them and you kill the boss. Pretty short, and it turns out these are literally lost sectors. Everyone kind of figured out that this one was, I don't remember the name of it, but it's the lost sector from the one part of Mars, not the main part you land in, the other part. And going through that again, essentially the same. They have re-skinned it, it's snowy, there's like pirate stuff in there, and it's obviously different enemies, but it is very much that location. And then I believe it was, people were like, yeah, also the one last week was a Tangled Shore lost sector, you're just running through it backwards. But that wasn't quite as obvious, I don't think. I talked about this yesterday on Twitter. I was served up a Mactus tweet where he compared the two shots and was like, you know, you can't be serious, I can't believe they did this. And then he was talking about how he didn't understand why they were saying they had to cut all this content, but then they were just putting the content back in, like content we paid for. And like I retweeted it to say it wasn't that big of a deal. And then this turned into a whole thing. This was not like me going after Mactus. I think Mactus is great. I love Mactus. I was just kind of saying that I was disagreeing with the sentiment that I think he was putting forth, and I think a lot of people were kind of talking about with this specific instance. And recycled content has always been a bit of a pain point in Destiny, and it doesn't matter if something is brought back minorly or majorly. Like, if something is brought back at all, there are always kind of complaints about recycled content. Even if it's like Leviathan, they're like, they did this grand overhaul and like, you know, totally redid it with all the egregore and stuff. People were like, oh, it's recycled content. So it kind of gets brought up no matter what. I do think there can be an overuse of recycled content, but I think we also have to recognize the realities of game development. And well, no one has been more opposed to content vaulting than me, and I think all the pushback has caused Bungie to scale back on content vaulting a little bit, which I wrote about earlier today. In some instances, in some situations, I feel like you're going to have to, you know, what are you doing? I wouldn't call it cutting corners, but like, this happens very frequently in all video games, and in this instance, I think it's okay because of, you know, the context, especially of what we're doing here. So these Pirate Lord quests, I think there's 4, 5, or 6 of them. I'm not sure how many there are, but it appears to be that these are not repeatable things. Like, I couldn't even get, like, I've already done it on 3 characters, so I couldn't even go back and redo it again on a character to get fresh footage for this video. I'm reusing some of the footage from yesterday because you cannot replay them. And there does not seem to be a reason to replay them because you are just literally running this thing, killing this boss, and then getting a relic. And there's nothing to farm here. You're not like getting, you know, loot or materials or really anything from these. And as far as I can tell, we're not going to be replaying these. I do wonder if maybe once you get to like advanced treasure maps, if maybe they end with another Pirate Lord run, but this isn't something you're going to be like farming on repeat. And if you're not, if that is not true, you may literally only run this once. So in that context, I can understand why Bungie would not want to use the resources to build 5 or 6 brand new locations that are essentially their own mini lost sectors just for something like this, and why they would take stuff that has been cut and is no longer in the game and put it in there for use here. In terms of this is content we paid for, and they removed it and they're putting it back in. Interestingly, the Pirate Lord things are free. I don't quite know how that works with the seasonal quests, but if you go to the grand list of stuff that is paid and free in Season of Plunder, anyone can run these Plunder Pirate Lord things, apparently. Again, I'm not 100% sure how that works, but that is listed as something that is free. And I think Bungie kind of thought about this. If they were reusing that, they weren't going to put it in the game as something that was locked into a paid season. So I think they were kind of anticipating this pushback to a certain extent. And then I don't think you can really compare taking one lost sector out of all of Mars to like, I can't believe they cut Mars and they're putting Mars back in. Like, it's not Mars. It's the geometry of one very specific space in Mars, which is like 2% of the whole zone. So I don't really think it's like, oh, they said they were saving space and now they're putting it back in. Like, which is it, Bungie? Like, I don't think that is, you can really make that argument here. In theory, I said this in my tweet in my conversation with Magdus, where I was like, I would love for them to actually be able to do this with strikes. Like, I would love for them to be able to cut away the parts of Mars they don't need and then give us back like strikes from Mars. I think, that would be valuable. But because strikes are more closely integrated into the entire patrol zone usually in these much larger, more sprawling areas, that is probably not doable. Whereas something like a lost sector, it's a more very localized specific instance, and that's something you're more easily able to cut out that zone and then repurpose it for something else here. I will say I don't really know why these Pirate Lord things exist at all. It just seems like kind of odd content in general. Like, they're so short. I mean, it's literally a lost sector, but like an old lost sector, like not the new ones that have like actual mechanics and stuff, like the moon and the Cosmodrome ones, and like it's just a very basic lost sector that apparently you're running like once. I'm a little surprised that you're not just getting the relics from killing the Catch Crash boss of the week, because you could run through the seasonal quest today at reset this week, and you didn't even have to do Catch Crash. It wasn't even part of the quest step. So it essentially ends when you go to get this relic, and then you go back to the Elixni Quarter and talk to people. You don't even have to do Catch Crash. And there is a new Catch Crash boss, and I think there's going to be 3 in total, so maybe less than the Pirate Lords, but the whole Pirate Lord thing just seems like kind of a weird little aside, especially given that these are just essentially one-off things that are you're just farming these relics, and they're kind of story integrated. There's dialogue in them, and then there's a decent amount of lore about the Pirate Lords, and by decent amount I mean like one lore tab in like gear, and then there's like one page of lore in a lore book you unlock. So you learn a little bit about these Pirate Lords that you murder immediately and kind of their relationship to Aramis. But it does seem like a weird little thing to put in the season. Like, I just don't think you would have had to have it at all necessarily, but the fact that it exists and is using old assets, it's like, okay. But like, look at, the rest of the season. I said this as the season launched, where it's easy to see how like 2 years ago, we could have had an entire season that was literally just expeditions. Season of the Worthy was essentially, just a public event, more or less, with like a couple Rasputin vaults and things, but like, it was pretty much a public event in existing zones. Whereas this season, we have expeditions, a public event, more or less, in an existing zone, but we also have Catch Crash, and then we have these weird little Pirate Lord things, and then a bunch of like social space stuff in the Elixni Quarter. So you could just see how kind of seasons have been beefed up over time, and we kind of move the goalposts a little bit. In this case, like, I understand why people would like see this immediately and kind of groan and roll their eyes, but I think once you think about it, and once you realize that these are probably really just going to be things you run once, maybe 2 or 3 times, depending on if you ever go back to them for any reason, which so far it doesn't look like you do, I think you can kind of understand why Bungie would not want to design content just purely from scratch for something that is deleted immediately. And they've done that before. Like, I still am in awe of how much work has gone into a lot of Bungie content that has just been erased, like presumably forever. That includes things like, Presage, which is arguably the best mission Bungie has ever made, and it's just gone after a year. Or back in the day when seasonal content was cut after a season, you had stuff like the Tree of Silver Wings, like one of the most beautiful spaces Bungie's ever designed, and that was gone after that season. Like, they have done that before, and it kind of sucks when they have to design something so cool that gets removed. So in this case, you know, if it's just this kind of very, very small part of the overall season, yeah, I get why they're using an old lost sector here. So, you know, there are instances where maybe there is too much recycling, and I think we have been there in the past in a lot of ways, but I think that has improved over time. And if we do see recycling now, it's like what we're seeing here, where it's a pretty small part of an overall whole rather than this entire thing is recycled. And I also think we're a little spoiled by Destiny. I know I'm like going into full Bungie shill mode here, but like the Division 2 had an entire year where all they did was replay the entirety of old seasons. Like they just redid a whole year of content and just did all the seasons over again, essentially. So like it is hard to make a live game with consistently new content all the time, and almost no other game does it. Almost no other game does it on the scale of Destiny. So like very select instances like this, like, yeah, I think it's okay. Not going to get too upset about it. I would assume that the rest of these Pirate Lord things are probably also going to be using old Lost Sector geometry or old zones to a certain extent, carved and put in little meteors, so don't be surprised when that happens. But, you know, also recognize both the context of this and also just game design in general. People recycle stuff all the time. It's just, have you ever seen like the Warzone map? It's like you copy pasted, you know, buildings from, you know, old games or from itself, like clone stamp. Like there was a ton of recycling in games because it is physically impossible to make everything all new from scratch all of the time. So this is a pretty common thing that happens, and other games get, you know, lambasted for this too, but it's usually done for a good reason. So anyway, I will move on to actual seasonal stuff from here. I just wanted to do a little bit of commentary on that. So anyway, thanks for watching. Don't get mad at Mactus. Was just trying to have a conversation, which when you have 140,000 Twitter followers starts to become impossible because it's so much, and things get very spun out of hand very quickly. So just keep a cool head there. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.